Now, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean president are holding a historic inter-Korean summit at the border truce village of Panmunjom. The high-profile leaders are likely to discuss a range of issues, including North Korea's nuclear weapons program. The historic meet comes following a series of back-channel talks between North and South Korean officials. The North Korean side comprises of a 9-member delegation, including Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong. Kim Jong-un will cross the military declaration line at 9:30 a.m. Korean time. What you can see are live shots of Kim Jong-un meeting South Korean President Moon Jae-in from the DMZ. As we all can see, he has crossed the demilitarized border, and he is in DMZ. And it will be at the Peace House of Panmunjom, where they will be holding the Inter-Korean Summit. After the official welcoming ceremony, which is taking place currently, both countries' delegations will meet at the Peace House. If there is an agreement after the talks, it will be announced in the evening. But no time has been set as yet for this announcement. As you can see, these are live visuals being streamed from South Korea's Panmunjom, where both the presidents, where South Korean President Moon Jae-in is meeting North Korea's Kim Jong-un. And as you can see, this is the guard of honor being accorded to Kim Jong-un. The security has been tightened at the inter-Korea border ahead of the high-profile talks, which come in more than a decade. About 2,800 journalists have registered at the main press center for this summit. And to give us more details, we are also joined in by international correspondent Ramesh Ramachandran, who's joining us live from the DMZ. And let's quickly also loop in Ramesh on this. Ramesh, these are live visuals of the historic Inter-Korean Summit that we can see. As we can see, Kim Jong-un has finally crossed the border and he is in South Korea now. What can be expected now? Let's begin with the Peace House of Panmunjom, where the Inter-Korean Summit is all set to take place. Brief us, how significant is Panmunjom?
Thank you and good morning, Akanksha. What we are seeing now happen live behind me in the Demilitarized Zone is the official welcome ceremony for Kim Jong-un, who barely moments ago physically, literally walked across the military demarcation line that separates the north from the south, becoming the first North Korean leader in history to set foot on South Korean soil. And just to take you through those visuals, historic visuals, Akanksha, of Kim Jong-un walking down from the steps of the building on his side of the border, walking across the military demarcation line, shaking hands with Moon Jae-in, president of South Korea, and having a chat, a conversation at the military demarcation line itself. And interestingly, Kim Jong-un pulled Moon Jae-in aside and pulled him into his side of the military demarcation line onto North Korean territory before they stepped back across the military demarcation into South Korean territory. So we're witnessing historic visuals now of the two leaders taking part in the welcome ceremony here, not far from here where I am at the moment, inside the Panmunjom village in the DMZ area. We welcome the welcome ceremony followed by the military guard of honor for Kim Jong-un, and before they proceed for the delegation level talks, it's expected to begin at about 10:30 local time in Peace House inside the DMZ.
Right, Ramesh, we can see these visuals being streamed from Korea, and as we can see, the welcoming ceremony has just taken place, and as you rightly mentioned, South Korean President Moon Jae-in pulled him inside across to the border. Let's begin with the Peace House of Panmunjom. Brief our viewers about the significance of Panmunjom.
Right. So, Akanksha, to talk about the venue of the summit itself, the third Inter-Korean summit. Panmunjom is the name of the village, which is the venue of the summit. Inside Panmunjom is the peace house where the meeting will take place. Now, Panmunjom has a historic significance. This was the site of the signing of the 1953 armistice between North Korea, China, and the US-led United Nations Command. So, there are more than two parties to the dispute here, and Panmunjom is historically important that way. Now, the meeting itself will take place inside the Peace House on South Korean soil. And in the meeting room, there will be an oval-shaped table around which there are 14 chairs, two of them reserved for Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un, which will have the mark or the design of the undivided Korean Peninsula embossed on the back of those two chairs. And we're given to understand that Kim Jong is accompanied by his sister, Kim Yo-jong, and that, to my mind, indicates a rising stature and profile of Kim Yo-jong in managing the affairs of North Korea. Remember, she visited South Korea not so long ago for the inaugural ceremony of the Winter Olympic Games at Pyeongchang. So, to my mind, it is significant that Kim Jong-un and his sister are in South Korea as we speak for the third Inter-Korean summit.
Right. Right. Ramesh, also brief our viewers about the issues at hand, primarily denuclearization. And I am going to come to denuclearization. But Ramesh, it is very important to establish for our viewers the importance of a peace agreement between North and South Korea, because an armistice has only paused a war which technically took place back in 1950 to 1953.
Indeed, and to talk about the issues, the agenda of the third Inter-Korean summit, as you correctly mentioned, Akanksha, the top issue, the priority will be given to the issue of denuclearization. Now, South Korea says North Korea must completely, verifiably, and irreversibly dismantle its nuclear weapons. That's the same demand being put forward by the US side as well. But North Korea says it will not yet commit to complete denuclearization. All it has committed to so far is to suspend all future nuclear and missile tests as a confidence-building measure.
Right. Ramesh, I'm going to request you to just pause over there. Let's dip into the ceremony which is taking place. It's indeed a historic moment for both the Koreas. Let's listen in. So, as we can see, this is the welcoming ceremony for Kim Jong-un taking place in the DMZ in South Korea. And let's quickly go back across to our international correspondent Ramesh Ramachandran, who's joining us live from the DMZ. Ramesh, we can see these visuals, and as we can see, Kim Jong-un and President Moon Jae-in are hosting all the dignitaries there. The red carpet has been rolled out. Indeed, historic visuals of the Inter-Korean summit. Let's talk about the issues we were discussing. Denuclearization is, of course, going to be a top agenda. Not to forget the peace agreement, which has been long due since the war took place back in 1950 to 53, and only an armistice has paused this war technically.
Right, Akanksha, before I come to the issues at hand, I want to talk a bit about the visuals that we are witnessing live from Panmunjom village inside South Korea of Moon Jae-in, President of South Korea, interacting with Kim Jong-un, Chairman and the leader of North Korea. We are witnessing the official welcome ceremony in honor of Kim Jong-un. Remember, Kim Jong-un crossed over the military demarcation line at exactly 9:30 a.m. local time, becoming the first North Korean leader in history to set foot on South Korean soil. Essentially, he's here for the third Inter-Korean Summit. But this summit is important in a regional and global context as well. Remember, this summit will be followed by the much anticipated summit between Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump of the US, and that will be something to watch out for as well. Now, these are visuals from the welcome ceremony in honor of Kim Jong-un, and this is the official family photo session for the leaders along with their respective delegations. Moon Jae-in, President of South Korea, flanked by Kim Jong-un along with their respective delegations, including Kim Jong-un's sister Kim Yo-jong, whose profile and stature is rising by the day in North Korean affairs. And coming to the issues at hand, Akanksha, now primarily there are three broad issues at hand here. As you correctly mentioned, the issue of denuclearization figures prominently on the agenda of South Korea. As I was mentioning before, South Korea expects North Korea to announce a complete, verifiable and irreversible denuclearization. But North Korea is not willing to commit to it just yet. All that it has said so far is that North Korea will suspend all future nuclear and missile tests until further notice as a confidence-building measure. Kim Jong-un saying in the run-up to the talks that North Korea has mastered, completed the strategic weapons program. It does not need to conduct any more tests. Remember, it has conducted 6 nuclear tests so far since in the last decade and more. The most recent being in September of last year, which was the 6th and the more powerful test so far. And he's also announced the closure of the Pyongyang nuclear test site, which was the site for all 6 nuclear tests, and also committed to not proliferate. That's important from India's perspective, Akanksha, because
Right.
India's primary concern has always been the proliferation linkages between North Korea and some countries in India's immediate neighborhood. And we're watching these two leaders entering the Peace House for their talks to begin any moment now. Back to you, Akanksha.
Yes, Ramesh, as we can see, these are visuals of Chairman of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, and South Korea President Moon Jae-in entering the Peace House in Panmunjom. Ramesh, also draw us a comparison between the two leaders. You know, there's a 34-year-old Kim Jong-un and a 65-year-old Moon Jae-in, you know, while Kim Jong-un really did not have much time to prepare for leadership before he succeeded his father Kim Jong-il. Here's Moon Jae-in, who was the chief of staff of former liberal South Korean President Roh Moo-hyun, who held the Korean second summit back in 2007. So clearly, Moon Jae-in is somebody who brings along a lot of experience.
Indeed, Akanksha, you raised some very valid questions and points there. Just to bring our viewers up to speed and the context in which this third Inter-Korean Summit is being held as we speak. Now, there have been 2 previous summits, the first in 2000 between the then South Korean President Kim Dae-jong and Kim Jong-un's late father Kim Jong-il. The second summit took place in the year 2007. Again in Pyongyang between Kim Jong-il, the late father of Kim Jong-un, and the then South Korean President Roh Moo-hyun. And this, as I mentioned, is the third Inter-Korean Summit between Kim Jong-un, and a first for him, really.
As we can see, there is the photo session happening right now, and there was an exchange between President Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un. Do carry us through the visuals that are taking place right now. All of them, as we can see, you know, there's much activity inside the Peace House in Panmunjom. Talk us through all the activity that's taking place there right now.
Right, so after the conclusion of the welcome ceremony and the military guard of honor in honor of Kim Jong-un, Both leaders, Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un, walked into the peace house located inside the Demilitarized Zone. The first engagement was the signing of a welcome message at the visitors' book kept inside the peace house. And they stood in front of the big wall-sized picture, photograph of one of the famous landscapes of the Korean Peninsula, and exchanged a few pleasantries before walking in for a closed-door discussion, informal discussion before the summit meeting actually begins, not far from at the moment. So that's where things stand at the moment, and the two leaders have had a welcome handshake at the military demarcation line. They've had a welcome ceremony, and they've had a photo op, and now they are going into their respective delegations before they regroup for the commencement of the third Inter-Korean Summit. It is important in many sense of the word, Akanksha, because a lot depends on how much of success or failure this round of talks between the two Koreas will be. South Korea and the US in particular expect North Korea to announce, at least commit to complete denuclearization sometime going forward. But Kim Jong-un sees nuclear weapons as an insurance policy, as a defense and deterrence. So it remains to be seen whether they can bridge this gap. At the same time, there are a couple of other issues on hand as well. The most important of them being the issue of an end to the 65-year-long war and the signing of a peace treaty between the two Koreas. Also, inter-Korean relations, especially the issue of reunification of divided families and the issue of reducing military hostilities across the border. Back to you, Akanksha.
Right. Ramesh, these are live visuals coming in from the DMZ. So we just witnessed a historic moment back there at the DMZ in Panmunjom, where South Korean President Moon Jae-in just hosted Chairman of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, and as we could see earlier, they have entered the peace house in the DMZ. And going back to our international correspondent who's at the DMZ right now, Ramesh Ramachandran. Ramesh, this is indeed a historic moment, and as we could see, they are already inside the peace house. Let's continue addressing these issues, some very integral issues you pointed out, some very, very crucial ones. One of them, of course, being denuclearization and, of course, the peace treaty as well. The meeting is clearly a preliminary event to pave the road for a future meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong-un.
Indeed, what we have to keep in mind, Akanksha, is that the issue of the Korean Peninsula or the Korean crisis is not a bilateral issue or dispute between the two Koreas, North and South. It actually involves a number of players, including the US.
Right.
Now, the US and South Korea are treaty allies. They have an alliance, and they also have the privilege and the benefit of living under a nuclear umbrella. So South Korea lives under the American nuclear umbrella and security guarantee. And any attack on South Korea will be treated as an attack on the US, and therefore US will intervene. Also, US has troops on the peninsula and in the region and beyond. So these are issues which need to be resolved going forward. North Korea's perspective, Akanksha, North Korea is not demanding the withdrawal of US troops just yet, but yes, it has indicated a desire to go in for a peace treaty, but that will involve all three parties, North Korea, South Korea and the US. So it remains to be seen how all these three players interact going forward. We're already seeing the North Koreans meeting the South Korean delegation. Next will be the meeting between North Korea and Donald Trump of the US sometime in late May or early June. And then there'll be another US-South Korea talk. So everything hinges around the trilateral three-way talks between and among North Korea, South Korea and the US. So clearly a lot rides on these two summits, the Inter-Korean Summit and the Trump-Kim meeting as well.
Absolutely agree with you, Ramesh, as you aptly pointed out that it is a trilateral talk that we are looking at, a three-way handshake between the US, North Korea and South Korea. Also, it's very important to delve into a bit of history, as we know that this is the third Inter-Korean Summit. There was one back in 2000 and in 2007. What went wrong back then, and how is the timing, more conducive now?
Well, it is essential to understand, Akanksha, that this is primarily a Moon Jae-in-led initiative. Remember, Moon Jae-in was sworn in as the president of South Korea on the 10th of May last year, and he won the election on the premise, on the campaign plank of having talks with North Korea. So he had this at the back of his mind right through his election campaign and even after he was sworn in as the South Korean president. And barely 2 months after his swearing in, after his inauguration, Moon Jae-in delivered a speech, a historic speech in Berlin, in Germany, in the first week of July last year, when he outlined his vision for peace on the Korean Peninsula and also said in so many words that he is open to talking with Kim Jong-un and also visiting North Korea. That was very important, Akanksha, to understand where Moon Jae-in is coming from. And from then on, we've seen both sides making incremental progress towards peace. We saw the both sides, North Korea and South Korea, agree to participate jointly in the Winter Olympic Games in Pyeongchang earlier this year, when the two Koreas fielded a unified team under a unified flag and competed in the Winter Olympic Games. Then came the commencement of a hotline between Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un. That hotline has not been operationalized just yet, but they have established a hotline nevertheless. That was followed by Kim Jong-un's decision to suspend all future nuclear and missile tests, and that was an important confidence-building measure in the run-up to the Inter-Korean summit. And recently we heard Moon Jae-in announce his decision to suspend and to stop all use of loudspeakers to blare propaganda across the DMZ into North Korea. So a lot has happened between May last year, when Moon Jae-in was sworn in as the president, and now when the two leaders are meeting as we speak. But that said, there's another context to all of this, Akanksha, because Kim Jong-un says he has the weapons, he has the nuclear weapons, and now is the time perhaps to go in for talks, especially because the United Nations sanctions may be beginning to bite on him and his regime, and he may be buying for time, or biding time, so to speak, in the hope that things might stabilize economically going forward. So there are multiple motivations for why Kim Jong-un decided to enter into talks with South Korea. But the fact that they are talking itself is important. And that gives immense possibilities going forward of resolving many contentious issues that have bedeviled the Korean Peninsula for almost 7 decades now.
Right, Ramesh, completely agree with you. There are a host of issues over there, but the fact that both North and South Korea are now talking and addressing each other, that in itself is historic and very, very pivotal. And I'm going to request you to actually just hang in there. We will come back to you for more. The world is watching the Inter-Korea summit. It's not the first attempt by both sides at peace, but one would hope that the talks can end 60 years of ongoing conflict between North and South. Here's a report.
In the wake of World War II, as the Cold War began, the Korean Peninsula was divided along the 38th parallel. The North received Soviet backing, while the United States supported the South. In 1948, the two sides became officially known as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea in the north and the Republic of Korea in the south. The Korean War broke out on June 25, 1950, when the North's army invaded the south. Capturing Seoul within days, North Korean forces advanced to the tip of the peninsula. A UN coalition led by American troops stepped in to force the North Koreans back, pushing them as far as the Sino-Korean border. Chinese forces crossed into the north to help launch a counter-offensive. UN troops retaliated, and eventually in May 1951 the border between the two countries was fixed around the 38th parallel. In July 1953, North Korea signed a ceasefire agreement with the US, marking the end of the fighting. An estimated 2 to 4 million people died or disappeared during the conflict. No formal peace treaty has since been signed, leaving North and South Korea still technically at war.
So going back to our international correspondent Ramesh Ramachandran, who's joining us live from the DMZ. Ramesh, we just briefly viewed, a gist of the entire history which North and South Korea share. It's very important to delve into history right now because as we all know that, the armistice back in 1953 has only paused an ongoing war which has still not found closure.
Indeed, the historic significance to all of this what's happening in South Korea today as we speak. But just to give our viewers a flavor of India's involvement in the Korean affairs, Akanksha, India has been a vital player in the affairs of the peninsula for many, many decades now. Remember, an Indian diplomat, KPS Menon, was the chairman of a UN commission that was mandated to oversee elections in undivided Korea. And even during the war, India sponsored a resolution which was accepted by both warring sides. And after the war ended in 1953 with an armistice agreement, the then General, Lieutenant General Timaya, chaired a commission, a repatriation commission, Neutral Nations Repatriation Commission, which oversaw the humanitarian relief operations. So clearly, India has been a key player in the affairs of the Korean Peninsula for many, many decades now. And India retains an abiding interest in seeing peace and security return to the Korean Peninsula. But that said, on the issue of the regional dimension to all of this issue, Akanksha, the US, China, Japan, Russia, India, all are equally interested in seeing normalcy, peace, security on the Korean Peninsula, especially at a time when there are other conflicts happening around the world. So all eyes are on these inter-Korean summit taking place in South Korea as we speak between Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un, to be followed by the much anticipated meeting between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un in either in May or early June.
Right, Ramesh. Also, it's very important to note how Kim Jong-un has involved his sister throughout. And I'm talking about Kim Yo-jong, who we also, earlier witnessed representing the North Korean envoy to the Olympics in Pyeongchang back in South Korea. So it's very important to establish her role in this entire inter-Korean summit. Brief us more about Kim Yo-jong's role.
Right, that's the most interesting aspect of the third inter-Korean summit, really. The coming of age, so to speak, of Kim Yo-jong as the heir apparent or the force behind Kim Jong-un and his regime. Remember, Kim Yo-jong, Kim Jong-un's sister, as you correctly mentioned, Akanksha, traveled to South Korea for the inaugural ceremony of the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics earlier this year. But that said, there was also speculation in the media here, at least in South Korea, that maybe Kim Jong-un will bring his wife, Ri Sol-ju, on today for the inter-Korean summit. But that did not happen. And we saw the pictures of Kim Yo-jong accompanying Kim Jong-un for the third inter-Korean summit today. Remember, Kim's wife and he had gone together to Beijing last month for Kim Jong-un's first visit abroad since coming to power in 2011, when they took that slow green train to Beijing and back. To my mind, there's a lot to be desired as far as the inner circle of Kim Jong-un goes. Remember, Kim Jong-un is accused of allegedly killing his own half-brother in Malaysia using the VX nerve agent and executing a couple of his generals, senior generals and army officers. So this is one temperamental, one young, brash leader who is unpredictable. It remains to be seen how he chooses to respond in the days ahead, given the fact that a lot rides on the success or otherwise of the third inter-Korean summit taking place in Panmunjom village in the Demilitarized Zone as we speak.
Right. Ramesh, I'm going to come back to you again. So I'm going to request you to just pause over there. For now, Kim Jong-un isn't the only one from his family who has crossed over to the South Korea. His sister Kim Yo-jong is accompanying him as part of the North's 9-member delegation. Kim Yo-jong has recently made her way into the spotlight, acting as her brother's envoy for the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. Here's more on why her presence matters.
He might be known as a reclusive dictator, but it now seems that North Korea's Kim Jong-un is looking to soften his image by putting the spotlight on the women in his life. The latest platform he's chosen to promote them is the Inter-Korean Summit. Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, will be part of North Korea's delegation in Seoul. This is Kim Yo-jong's latest high-profile appearance following her attendance at the Winter Olympics hosted in February by South Korea. She was there as her brother's envoy. What's noteworthy is that Kim was the first member of her family to visit South Korea since the Korean War. Holding a meet over lunch with Moon Jae-in, Kim Yo-jong personally delivered her brother's invitation for the South Korean president to a landmark summit. For many in South Korea, the Kim Yo-jong sideshow eclipsed the glamour of the Winter Olympics. For Kim Yo-jong, her surprise first international appearance confirmed that her star was on the rise. She first drew global attention last year when she was promoted to the ruling Politburo, the country's top decision-making body. She represented the regime on Kim's behalf at the Winter Games and will now stand by his side at the biggest diplomatic event between the two Koreas in years. Advertising the new normal of North Korea is not restricted to Kim Jong-un's sister alone. Only recently, the North Korean leader declared his wife as the First Lady of the state. The title of First Lady is being used for the first time in 40 years in North Korea. Ri Sol-ju, in fact, accompanied her husband on his surprise visit to China last month. And now, Seoul could witness yet another display of woman power from the North Korean regime. Bureau Report, WION.
Now let's quickly go back to our international correspondent Ramesh Ramachandran, who's joining us live from the DMZ. Ramesh, how pivotal is going to be the US role? As we all know that President Moon Jae-in of South Korea is keeping US in the loop constantly, and that he is going to have a meeting with Trump before a meeting actually materializes for North Korea and US President Donald Trump.
Indeed, as we were discussing moments ago, Akanksha, that a lot depends on the interplay or interaction between three key players, in this case, North Korea, South Korea and the US. Now, we've heard Donald Trump of the US warn that and threaten to walk out of his meeting with Kim Jong-un if he does not see the talks progressing the way he would like it to, or he threatened to cancel the talks altogether if he thinks that the Inter-Korean summit was a complete disaster or failure. So everything hinges on the talks between Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in as we speak. They are going to begin talks in about half an hour from now. And a lot rides on the success or failure of those talks, because a lot depends on that for Trump to decide to meet Kim Jong-un next month or in early June. So the US is an interested party in the case. Remember, the US has been involved in the affairs of the Korean Peninsula for many, many decades now. And the US, for its part, wants a categorical assurance from North Korea that they will completely, verifiably and irreversibly dismantle their nuclear weapons. That's the maximum position or the red line so far as US is concerned. Whether Kim Jong-un decides to walk down that road or not is a million-dollar question. We have to wait and watch for the outcome of the Inter-Korean summit before we judge the success or otherwise of the much-anticipated handshake between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un going forward.
Absolutely agree with you, Ramesh, that there is much at stake here for Kim Jong-un as well, and this Inter-Korean summit will actually determine what goes out there between Kim Jong-un and President Donald Trump. Also, Ramesh, is there a possibility that projects outlined back in 2007 under the then South Korean President Roh Moo-hyun were shelved due to the subsequent election victory of the Conservatives? But could they be revived now by Moon and Kim?
Well, if you look at the history, the recent history of the inter-Korean affairs, Akanksha, as I mentioned, the first summit took place in 2000, the second in 2007. Now, one of the outcomes of the 2000 summit was the commencement of a joint industrial park in the Demilitarized Zone, which houses the Kaesong Industrial Complex, where South Korean companies set up shop and employed workers from North Korea in a joint operation, economic cooperation inside the DMZ. And the Kaesong, by the way, happens to fall inside North Korean territory. But that was stopped after the relations worsened over the last several years, and the expectation here in South Korea is that economic trade will get a revival after these third inter-Korean talks between Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in. The other issue to be noticed here is that the previous two summits focused primarily on inter-Korean relations. By that I mean the issue of reunification of families divided by the 53 war. Remember, many families, both in North Korea and South Korea, have been separated due to the 53 war. And over the decades, some of them have been able to meet their families, friends and relatives across, living in each other's country. But Moon Jae-in wants the unification of the families to be key priority in the talks as well. But this year's summit will primarily focus on the issue of denuclearization. As I mentioned, South Korea insists on having a categorical assurance, at least in writing, at least the intent to dismantle its nuclear weapons capabilities going forward. And that remains the primary focus of the third inter-Korean talks between Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un.
Right. Ramesh, also it's important to, go back into history, because back in 2000, Kim Dae-jung, the then South Korean president, had already introduced a sunshine policy where much aid was sent to North Korea, and the reunification of those divided by war had also taken place back then. But that failed miserably. How can we be more optimistic now? Is the timing and approach any different?
Well, Akanksha, if you look at the history of summits, big summits between any two countries around the world, there's always an element of risk of the summit not going right, not proving to be a success, and that will have consequences for both parties involved, the region and the world at large. So in the case of the two Koreas, this has been the same case. There's so many high expectations built up in the run-up to the summits that it sometimes falls short of the people's expectations. That's been the case with the two previous summits in 2000 and 2007. But the interesting thing to remember here is that Kim Dae-jung, the late president of South Korea, who initiated the talks for the first time in 2000, ended up with a Nobel Peace Prize the same year.
Right.
So clearly a lot rides on the third inter-Korean summit between Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un. So it remains to be seen whether these two people can work together, come to an understanding going forward on the way forward for achieving peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula, and bring an end to the 65-year-old war by signing, at least indicating a desire to sign a peace treaty.
Absolutely, Ramesh. It's a very wait-and-watch situation at the moment. And I'm going to come back to you to analyze both the leaders who are in the peace village of Panmunjom. But before that, officials from North and South Korea ensured that today's inter-Korean summit concludes without a hitch. Right from how and when Kim Jong-un will cross over into South Korea to the exact time of his much-hyped handshake with Moon Jae-in, everything is carefully being looked into. But how do people look at Kim Jong-un? WION's Ramesh Ramachandran reports from Seoul.
Is Kim Jong-un really a madman? Or is there a method to his madness? The answer depends on who one speaks to. In South Korea, opinion is divided.
Some people believe and support that Kim Jong-un has opened channels of communication with other countries on denuclearization.
Others seem to not trust him.
I think many Korean people don't trust Kim Jong-un yet, because for a couple of years he did something, the mad things. That's why many people don't trust yet. But from this year, he changed his mind, and that's why. So we are looking forward to it as much as I have made a big decision this year.
However, some in Japan view Kim Jong-un as a mysterious person, someone with an image problem.
The Kim Jong-un threat Japanese by launching a missile last year a lot of time. So, in my opinion, he's just a little mysterious, or I don't know why he's launching a missile repeatedly. So, but recently the talk has just started. So, the think the image to Kim Jong-un is gradually changing. He is a very strategic person or not. Just later, I think the image is now gradually changing.
On Tuesday, the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe spoke to the South Korean President Moon Jae-in about the North Korean crisis. Japan has not ruled out talks with North Korea. It might depend on whether or how successful the next big summit between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un turns out to be. With Ramesh Ramachandran in Seoul, Amitabh Brevi, WION.
And now let's quickly bring you those visuals again of the historic meet between Chairman of North Korea Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in. And these are visuals for all our viewers who are just tuning into WION. These are historic visuals of the Inter-Korean Summit taking place at the DMZ in Panmunjom. It is a historic first for North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in, who met at the border truce village of Panmunjom in the Demilitarized Zone. The two leaders shook hands and walked the red carpet. These are visuals of Kim Jong-un's welcome ceremony that just took place roughly half an hour ago. And it was at 9:30 a.m. in the morning that Chairman of North Korea Kim Jong-un crossed across the border. He was received by South Korean President Moon Jae-in, and these are visuals of the welcoming ceremony. The high-profile leaders are likely to discuss a range of issues, including North Korea's nuclear weapons program. After stepping into South Korea, the North Korean leader signed the visitor's book with a historic line, "New history begins." Kim Jong-un is the first North Korean leader to set foot in South Korea since the 1950 Korean War. Before the formal talks, Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in held a closed-door meeting at the Peace House in Panmunjom. And the current status is that the closed-door meeting is currently underway inside the Peace House in Panmunjom. The historic meet comes following a series of back-channel talks between North and South Korean officials. The North Korean side comprises of a 9-member delegation, including Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong. After the official welcoming ceremony, both countries' delegations will meet at the Peace House, which is already underway. And as we all know, that the prime focus will be on denuclearization. A peace treaty will also be considered. A reunion for all those segregated by the war between North and South Korea will also be one of the top focuses. And to bring us a more live perspective, I am joined in by our international correspondent Ramesh Ramachandran, who's joining us live from Seoul. Let's quickly go across to Ramesh. Ramesh, this is a historic moment for all our viewers who are just tuning into WION at the moment. Also, let's draw a comparison between the North and South Korean leaders. There is the 34-year-old Kim Jong-un and the 65-year-old Moon Jae-in, who, of course, is bringing his own set of legacy from 2007, because he was the chief presidential secretary to Mr. Roh and led preparations for his meeting in Pyongyang with Kim Jong-il.
Indeed, Akanksha, it's a study in contrast, really. Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un, two complete contrasting personalities. Now, Moon Jae-in is a liberal democratic leader who came to power in May last year. And he was sworn in on the 10th of May last year, and he won the election on the plank of having good ties or better ties with North Korea. In fact, even when he was a candidate for running for the election, he told reporters that he would like to visit North Korea, maybe make North Korea's first visit abroad. And he also spoke about rapprochement with North Korea as a candidate in the elections. And after winning the election, and barely 2 months afterwards, he went to Berlin in Germany and he delivered a speech at the Kerber Foundation there on the 7th of July when he spoke about his vision for peace on the Korean Peninsula. And that, to my mind, is the bedrock, the basis, the foundation for what we're seeing happening in South Korea today as we speak between Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un's third inter-Korean summit talks here as we speak. So everything hinges on or revolves around Moon Jae-in's concept, his leadership, his capabilities of trying to forge peace with North Korea. And what is happening now is a manifestation of that sentiment, of that thought, of that desire for peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula. Now, talking about Kim Jong-un, as you correctly mentioned, Akanksha, Kim Jong-un is young. He's brash, he's sometimes reckless, but the fact is that he is the undisputed leader, the sole leader of North Korea, and he wields all leverages, all powers, economic, military, and all the arms of the government. So he is the one-point person for all issues dealing with North Korea. But that said, he has his own handicaps. The sanctions are beginning to bite on him and his regime. And that is one of the reasons probably why he's ready to talk to South Korea and also
Since you aptly mentioned that,
it remains to be seen whether he will end up going beyond his commitments to talk about nuclear weapons.
Absolutely. Ramesh, since you just mentioned that, you know, that the UN sanctions are biting into North Korea, and that might be just one of the reasons for North Korea to have actually come and, you know, take this initiative for the Inter-Korean Summit. Elaborate for our viewers, you know, what could be the other reasons for North Korea to have actually, you know, led to this Inter-Korean Summit finally?
Well, let's face it, as we speak, Akanksha, North Korea is a nuclear weapons power. The world may not recognize its nuclear weapons power status, but North Korea says it has mastered, completed, perfected its strategic weapons program, which is why it decided to suspend all future nuclear and missile tests. So that's one of the reasons why North Korea feels confident or comfortable in opening up channels of communication with both South Korea and the US. So sanctions and its mastery over a nuclear weapons program may be the two key reasons why Kim Jong-un is willing to dialogue with South Korea and Donald Trump as well. So a lot hinges on what Kim Jong-un thinks, the way his mind works. Now, he may be biding for time. He has reneged on commitments before, so it remains to be seen whether he lives up to the expectations this time around, Akanksha.
Right. It is very important at the moment, and this is going to be a very pivotal meet, and we will have to see what comes out of this summit, because as you aptly mentioned, a lot hinges on this Inter-Korean Summit. I am going to come back to you for more. But for now, the tensions on the Korean Peninsula is not just about the Kim regime's nuclear capabilities. The disputes between North and South go at least 60 years back, when the two countries fought the Korean War. Ramesh Ramachandran decodes the relationship for you.
Kim Jong-un will literally, physically walk across the military demarcation line that separates North Korea from South Korea. He will first enter the Joint Security Area, the JSA, which is administered by the United Nations. And then he will walk past those blue huts that you see at the JSA to set foot on South Korean soil for the first time in nearly 6 decades by any North Korean leader. From there, he will walk across to the Peace House, which is located inside South Korea in the village of Panmunjom. Now, Panmunjom has a historical significance because this was a site of the signing of the 1953 armistice. And Kim Jong-un will be accompanied by his sister, Kim Yo-jong. And this indicates, to my mind at least, the rising stature or profile of his sister in North Korean affairs. Remember, she visited South Korea not so long ago for the inaugural ceremony of the Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games. And on Friday, at the third Inter-Korean summit, she will accompany Kim Jong-un for the much-anticipated handshake and talks between Kim Jong-un and South Korea's President Moon Jae-in. Now, talking about the meeting room itself.
And as we told you earlier, the meeting in the Peace House is already on. It's underway in Panmunjom. Let's bring you live visuals. These are the live visuals coming in from the DMZ, where you can see the chairman of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, address South Korean President Moon Jae-in and his delegates. And as you can see, Kim Jong-un is accompanied by his sister Kim Yo-jong.
나가는 계기가 돼서 기대하시는 분들의 그 기대에도 부응하고 오늘 또 결과가 좋아서 오기 전에 보니까 오늘 저녁에 만찬 음식 가지고 많이 이야기하던데 어렵사리 평양에서부터 평양냉면을 가져왔습니다. 가져왔는데 대통령께서 좀 편한 마음으로 평양냉면 이 멀리 온 멀다고 말하면 안 되겠구나. 좀 맛있게 드셨으면 좋겠습니다. 그래서 오늘 정말 허심탄회하게 진지하게 솔직하게 이런 마음가짐으로 오늘 문재인 대통령님과 좋은 이야기를 하고 또 반드시 필요한 이야기를 하고 그래서 좋은 결과를 만들어내겠다는 걸 문재인 대통령 앞에도 말씀드리고 이 기자 여러분들한테도 말씀드립니다. 감사합니다.
To give us more details, I am also joined in by our international correspondent Ramesh Ramachandran, who is joining us live from Seoul. Let's quickly go across to Ramesh, who is adding more of perspective. Ramesh, you know, this seems more like an informal talk at the moment, as we also heard a bit of laughter over there. Your take on what's currently underway in the Peace Village in Panmunjom?
Right. So what is happening now is that Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un are having a restricted opening preliminary discussion. And Kim Jong-un is flanked by his sister Kim Yo-jong and one other senior official. On the other side, facing him, is Moon Jae-in and his two aides. So there are 6 people in the meeting room as we speak. Kim Jong-un has finished his opening remarks, and now we are seeing the South Korean leader Moon Jae-in speak to the North Korean delegation led by Kim Jong-un. If I can just run you through some of his comments being made by the South Korean leader. He says all eyes are on their talks, the third Inter-Korean summit between the North and the South Korea, and a lot rests on these two leaders to ensure peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula going forward. And he hopes to have a fruitful discussion with Kim Jong-un over the next few hours.
Right. This is the much-awaited historic summit.
And Akanksha, just to let you know that Moon Jae-in has asked reporters and the foreign journalists to vacate the meeting room for to allow him to have a private conversation with Kim Jong-un.
All right, and that's just happened, as we can see. These are live visuals coming in from the DMZ, where the journalists and media have now been asked to step out of the room. So there you go, Ramesh. Quite a historic moment, not just for the two Koreas, but also for the entire world. And we just witnessed a bit of history over there as the Inter-Korean Summit finally is underway inside the Peace Village of Panmunjom. And this was the Peace House in Panmunjom village, which was the summit venue, and this was also the site of the summit back when the signing of the 1953 armistice happened. And we witnessed the oval-shaped table in the meeting room along with the 14 chairs of the two leaders. We will go back to Ramesh and talking about the preparations for this big day. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is also readying himself for a meeting with Donald Trump and his wife Melania. The Korean leader has done something quite unexpected. He's elevated his wife to the position of North Korea's First Lady. The title will be used for the first time in 40 years. So why did Kim do this and what does it mean? The next story explains you more.
She was seen quite recently with her husband Kim Jong-un during his surprise visit to China. Kim's father and grandfather had never appeared in public with their wives. In fact, the title of First Lady has not been used in North Korea in the last 4 decades. But Kim Jong-un has decided to give his wife Ri Sol-ju the title of First Lady. The announcement, like all major ones in North Korea, was made by the country's elderly star anchor woman Ri Chun-hee, further enhancing Ri's standing. So just why did Kim take the decision to elevate his wife as First Lady? After all, there is one star of the show in North Korea, and that's Kim himself. For one, analysts say her promotion is part of an effort to paint North Korea as a normal state as it prepares for summits with South Korean President Moon Jae-in next Friday and later with US President Donald Trump. It also gives her a title matching that of their wives, Kim Jong-suk and Melania, to show the two countries are equals, and very likely Ri will attend the summit if Melania does. Ri was earlier referred to as comrade by the North Korean state media. Little is known about her except that she's around 29 years old, comes from a humble background and reportedly attended a music school in China. It's not just his wife that he's put the spotlight on. Kim Jong-un has increasingly shared the stage with his younger sister, who became an instant celebrity as his envoy to the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. Kim appears to be trying out a new tactic to boost the image of his authoritarian regime ahead of a series of summits and diplomatic moves that have significantly raised his international profile. The timing of what's being called his charm offensive suggests he's hoping to change the optics of his regime, if not its iron-fisted domestic policies, by presenting a softer face to the outside world. Bureau Report, WION.